There is a pervasive fear gripping the modern economy, a sense that the ground beneath our feet is shifting intentionally. We hear terms like financial repression and worry about the implementation of central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. The anxiety is specific. It is the fear that the money in your bank account is no longer yours, that it can be programmed, restricted, or deleted by a central authority. People believe this is a new phenomenon, a product of the digital age and the so-called Great Reset. But this is a dangerous misconception. The war on the public's ability to hold independent sovereign wealth did not begin with software engineers in the 21st century. It began with a legislative coup in the 19th century. To understand the mechanics of the coming dollar collapse, you must understand the event that created the template for modern monetary control, the crime of 1873. Before 1873, the United States operated on a bimetallic standard. This was the system the Founding Fathers intended. Silver and gold were equal partners in the economy. This dual system was crucial for the average American because silver was the money of the people. It was abundant, it was used for daily wages, and it was used to buy groceries and supplies. Gold, by contrast, was the money of international trade, the preferred medium of the banking elite and large corporations. Under this system, any citizen could take raw silver bullion to the U.S. Mint and have it struck into legal tender dollars. This right ensured that the supply of money could grow alongside the population and the economy. It was a check against the centralization of power. But the banking interests of London and New York viewed this abundance as a threat. They understood a fundamental truth of imperial finance. If you control the currency, you control the nation. A plentiful money supply meant high wages for workers and fair prices for farmers. It meant that debts were easier to pay off. For the creditor class, the bankers who lent the money, this was unacceptable. They wanted a currency that was scarce, expensive, and difficult to acquire. They wanted a system where the money grew more valuable over time, effectively increasing the real value of the debts owed to them. In February of 1873, they got their wish. Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1873. On the surface, it was presented as a mundane revision of mint laws, a bureaucratic cleanup of old statutes. Few congressmen even read the bill in its entirety. But buried within the dense legal text was a single, devastating omission. The standard silver dollar was dropped from the list of authorized coins. With the stroke of a pen, silver was demonetized. The impact was not immediate, but it was inevitable. By removing silver, the government effectively cut the monetary base in half. This created an artificial scarcity of money. As the demand for money grew with the expanding country, the supply remained choked off. The result was a massive, crushing deflation. This was the first great wealth transfer of the industrial age. Over the next 2 decades, the prices of crops and goods collapsed. A farmer who borrowed $1,000 in 1870 while wheat was high found himself trying to pay back that same debt in 1875 when wheat was worthless. He had to work twice as hard to pay back the same amount of principal. Millions of Americans were driven into bankruptcy. The long depression that followed was not an accident of the free market. It was a mathematical certainty engineered by the demonetization of silver. The bankers and bondholders, however, made a fortune. They collected debts in gold-backed dollars that were worth far more than the money they had originally lent out. By destroying silver, the financial elite successfully captured the U.S. economy, forcing the nation onto a gold standard that favored the few at the expense of the many. But the crime of 1873 was not just about profit. It was about establishing a hierarchy. It taught the financial elite that they could alter the definition of money itself without the public noticing until it was too late. They learned that by restricting the medium of exchange, they could force the entire population into a state of dependency. Yet, even with silver destroyed, the bankers still had a problem. They had consolidated wealth, but they had not yet consolidated total control over the issuance of currency itself. They needed a mechanism to ensure that this power could never be challenged by the voters again. The mechanism they needed arrived in 1913 with the creation of the Federal Reserve. The establishment of a central bank was the direct spiritual successor to the crime of 1873. If the demonetization of silver was the act of disarming the public, the Federal Reserve was the installation of a permanent garrison. It solidified central bank power over the entire economic life of the nation, removing the control of currency from the hands of the people and placing it firmly into the hands of unelected technocrats. We are now living through the final, chaotic stages of this timeline. The logic that drove the bankers to destroy silver is the exact same logic driving the modern push toward a currency reset. The parallels are not just similar, they are identical. In 1873, the goal was to remove a decentralized, uncontrollable form of money, silver, to force reliance on a scarce asset controlled by the elite. Today, the goal is to remove the last remnants of financial privacy, physical cash, to force reliance on a fully programmable digital ledger. The United States is currently drowning in a global debt bubble of unprecedented proportions. The federal debt has spiraled beyond mathematical repayment. Under a normal system, this would lead to a default. But in the world of imperial finance, governments do not default on their own terms. They change the rules of the game. The current system of fiat money, which began when the dollar was severed from gold in 1971, has reached its mathematical limit. The interest payments alone are consuming the national revenue. The architects of the system know that the dollar collapse is not a matter of if, but when. This is where the trap snaps shut. Just as the Long Depression was engineered to transfer real assets from farmers to bankers, the coming crisis is being engineered to facilitate the greatest wealth transfer in human history. The solution that will be offered for the collapse of the dollar will not be a return to sound money, gold, or silver. It will be the introduction of central bank digital currencies. They will sell this new system as a safety net. They will promise stability, instant payments, and protection from the volatility of the crashing old world. But this is the crime of 1873, reimagined for the digital age. A CBDC is not money. It is a surveillance tool masquerading as currency. It allows the issuer to dictate not just the supply of money, but how it is spent. This is the ultimate form of financial repression. It is the ability to apply negative interest rates directly to your savings, forcing you to spend or lose your wealth. It is the power to turn off your ability to transact if you dissent. The destruction of silver was a war on independence. The destruction of cash and the transition to digital control is a war on sovereignty itself. The blueprint remains unchanged. They create a crisis by manipulating the money supply, first by inflating the bubble with cheap credit, then by crashing it with manufactured scarcity. In the ensuing panic, the public begs for a solution, and the elite provide one that further consolidates their power. We are standing at the precipice of 1873, all over again, but on a global scale. The crime was never just about silver. It was about establishing a monopoly on value. As we move toward 2027 and beyond, the question remains, will the public recognize the trap before the cage door closes, or will we accept the digital equivalent of the demonetized dollar? The history books tell us that when money dies, freedom usually dies with it. The only difference this time is that there is no western frontier left to flee to. The frontier is now the money itself.